every time JK's warm fingertips slowly traced her body through the thin dress. She had to swallow her breath. Her body tensed automatically at each touch. But surprisingly, Sera didn't pull away. Rather, she quietly accepted his touch with her head lowered and eyes closed. JK hesitated no longer. He carefully cupped her chin, and their trembling lips slowly met. Their breathing intertwined, and fingertips began wandering over each other's bodies, following emotions they had suppressed for so long. Before the story begins, please subscribe and like. Thank you. The story I'm about to tell you is not simply about an affair. It's a confession about the true face of humanity. Endlessly wavering between morality and guilt in the name of love. 3 months had passed since he lost his wife Seoyeon. But JK still couldn't escape the shock of that day. Sitting on the living room sofa, staring blankly at the blurry television screen, his eyes looked lifeless. He went to work every day, but couldn't focus. And when he returned home after work, only silent air greeted him. Seoyeon was suddenly diagnosed with cancer and left JK's side in just a few months. The things she left behind remained as they were. In the drawer were the notebook and lip balm she used until the end, and in the bathroom corner sat the hairbrush she loved using. JK couldn't organize those things. He was afraid that the moment he cleared them away, his wife would truly disappear. One day while living in deep sadness, the door opened with a familiar doorbell sound. The person who cautiously stepped in was his wife's younger sister, Sera. She was holding a soup pot in her hands, with her worried eyes. She was always someone who spoke quietly and acted carefully. "Brother-in-law, you haven't eaten, right? Today I made your favorite soybean paste stew." Sera headed to the kitchen with a forced bright smile. Instead of answering, JK quietly nodded and slowly sat at the dining table. Strangely, the situation didn't feel awkward. It suddenly reminded him of that familiar scene, when the three of them ate dinner together while Seoyeon was alive. After that day, Sera visited the house often. On weekends she brought side dishes and on weekday evenings, she stopped by briefly to help clean. Even without her words, JK was comforted just by her presence. He had the illusion that warmth was returning to the house without his wife. And his heavy breathing began to lighten little by little. JK was gradually changing after that day. At the table where he ate alone, there was now someone to share a spoon with. And seeing her to the door after meals naturally settled into routine. It was a very small change. But within it, slowly awakening emotions were quietly hidden. "Brother-in-law, are you sleeping better these days?" Sera, sitting across the table, asked carefully. "I can't sleep well. Even when I lie down, too many thoughts keep coming." Sera nodded and smiled gently. The moment he saw that smile, JK suddenly thought of Seoyeon's face. The eyes and expressions were different. But somehow the warmth conveyed was similar. Such moments were melting JK's frozen heart very gradually. That evening, Sera played quiet jazz music on her laptop. JK came out to the living room for the first time in a while. Drinking tea while listening to music, and Sera sat quietly beside him. Wordlessly flowing music, soft lighting, and only tranquil silence between them filled the space. "Brother-in-law, I dreamed of my sister last night." She was smiling. Hearing that, JK shifted his gaze to Sera. Sera held the mug tightly with both hands, her head lowered. "She said you're too kind, that you shouldn't suffer alone too much." Tears were already forming in Sera's eyes. Without a word, JK reached out and carefully placed his hand on top of hers. The touch was very brief. But clear warmth was conveyed, and Sera didn't pull away. After that day, JK kept thinking of Sera. Her cooking in the kitchen, smiling while folding laundry, brushing her hair back while looking out the window. All those scenes kept appearing before his eyes, and echoing quietly in his heart. A few days later, Sera suggested a drive. JK felt like going out for the first time in a while and readily agreed. And the two headed to a small cafe near the beach. Inside the car, pop songs from the radio played instead of jazz, and sunset spread outside the window. Brother-in-law, going out together. Like this reminds me of when the three of us used to go places often. You're right. Back then you always chattered a lot, but these days you're so quiet. I didn't know anything back then. I thought my sister would be by my side forever. At those words, JK couldn't say anything more. A quiet silence flowed in the car for a moment, and within that quietness, their feelings for each other slowly began to surface. That's when it happened. The moment the car stopped at a light, JK's hand reaching for the gear shift brushed against Sera's hand. Both flinched simultaneously, but JK didn't quickly withdraw his hand. Sera seemed surprised but remained still. In that brief moment when their hands touched, an inexplicable strange current flowed through the air. I'm sorry, brother-in-law. I must have put my hand there for no reason. No, it's okay. I'm sorry. JK answered with a smile. But from that moment, the atmosphere in the car clearly changed. That brief contact seemed to have broken down. Even the last distance that had been left between them. On the way back, they barely spoke. But the silence wasn't uncomfortable and actually seemed familiar. JK secretly looked at Sera's profile reflected in the passenger window. Then turned his head away. Emotions difficult to explain in words kept welling up. And he opened the window slightly to try to suppress those feelings. That night, JK lay in bed unable to fall asleep easily. In his head, Sera's smile, her trembling voice, and the touch of fingertips in the car that day kept circling. He closed his eyes and thought quietly as if whispering, "What is this? What am I thinking right now?" But those feelings were already shaking his heart like an unstoppable wave. The next day, as soon as JK got home from home, Sera visited a little earlier than usual. She held a pretty bouquet in her and wearing an elegant black dress. JK opened the door with a puzzled expression. And Sera smiled awkwardly as she held out the flowers. "Brother-in-law, today is my sister's Memorial Day. I just brought flowers she liked." JK accepted the flowers and nodded silently. He had forgotten the date for a moment, and though one corner of his heart sank heavily, he was warmed by Sera's thoughtfulness. After eating dinner together and placing flowers in front of Seoyeon's photo, the two sat side by side on the sofa. JK brought out wine for Sera, and she accepted the glass without refusing. In a subtle atmosphere, they quietly shared past memories. "Brother-in-law, my sister told me before. She said if I ever meet someone like you, I should never let them go." Seoyeon said that too. "Yes, she meant it. My sister always respected you. I did too." Sera's voice was quiet, but firm, and JK felt his hand holding the glass tremble slightly. How she had been seeing him, the emotions she couldn't express until now, began rushing in all at once. A few more glasses of wine were exchanged. And the atmosphere flowed increasingly softly. JK played music, and gentle jazz filled the room. Sera leaned against the sofa back with her eyes closed, appreciating the music, and JK quietly watched her profile before suddenly turning his gaze away. "Sera?" When JK called carefully, Sera opened her eyes. "Yes, brother-in-law. You, when our hands touched that day during the drive. What did you think?" At those words, Sera couldn't speak for a moment. And soon she smiled slightly and lowered her head. I was surprised. But I didn't dislike it. Those words sounded like permission. JK steadied his breath and quietly reached out his hand. Sera didn't pull away anymore. The moment their hands touched, the tension in the air heightened greatly. JK pulled her hand and moved closer. And very slowly, he kissed her lips. Sera opened her eyes as if surprised, but soon quietly closed them. Even after that brief moment when their lips touched ended, the two remained still, looking at each other. And in that moment, a boundary that shouldn't be crossed crumbled. JK cupped her face and kissed her again. And Sera carefully wrapped her arms around his shoulders. Fingertips traced down the neckline, and body heat, transmitted through the thin dress, gradually enveloped them. Sera, are you okay? Isn't this too fast? No. I've liked you for a long time, brother-in-law. JK had no more words. He just held her in his arms and kissed her for a long time. His tongue slowly explored Sera's lips. And Sera opened her mouth to receive him. Their tongues intertwined, and the kiss deepened more and more. JK's hand slowly began unzipping the back of Sera's dress. Sera remained still as if holding her breath. And the dress slid down over her shoulders. When her white shoulders were revealed, JK placed his lips there. Sera moaned softly and tilted her head back. Brother-in-law. Her voice was trembling. JK continued kissing along her neck, collarbone, and shoulders, and Sera's breathing grew rougher. He slowly removed the dress completely, and Sera sat before JK, wearing only lace underwear. JK gazed at her for a long while. Sera's body revealed under the soft lighting was beautiful. Her skin was pale and smooth. And her chest rose and fell with each shallow breath. Sera tried to cover her chest with her arms as if embarrassed. But JK held her hands. Don't cover yourself. You're so beautiful. Sera wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his chest. After carefully laying her on the bed, JK also began removing his shirt. Sera lay on the bed watching JK. When his firm chest and abs were revealed, Sera's face grew even redder. JK lay beside Sera and held her again. Sera tensed for a moment but soon relaxed her body. JK gazed at her chest for a while, then slowly brought his hand there. Brother-in-law. Sera made a small sound. When JK's hand gently caressed her chest, Sera's body responded. JK lowered his head and kissed Sera's chest. Her hands gripped JK's hair and pulled him closer to her. Brother-in-law, it feels good. I feel good too. Sera gripped the bed sheets, receiving that stimulation with her whole body. JK leaned over Sera and kissed her lips. Their bodies moved as one, and her nails began leaving marks on his back. They held each other like that for a long while, catching their breath. JK slowly withdrew from Sera and lay beside her. Sera buried her face in his chest and quietly shed tears. Why are you crying? Because I'm happy. JK held her tightly. That night, the two held each other for a long time. He opened his eyes to the morning sunlight. Beside him was Sera sleeping quietly. Her shoulders revealed above the thin blanket. Her chest breathing evenly, her two cheeks still flushed red. He watched her for a long while, then quietly withdrew his gaze. Was this the right thing to do? Guilt rose deep in his chest. There was regret toward his wife Seoyeon, but he didn't regret it. All night, Sera's eyes, fingertips, lips, and even her trembling breath were clearly remembered. And it felt like something was awakening deep in his heart. A moment later, Sera slowly opened her eyes. And her eyes met JK's. Brother-in-law. No, I don't know what to call you now. Sera smiled awkwardly, but anxiety and excitement were both contained in that smile. Just like before. Even though this happened? Yes. Just as it was. Wavering was contained in his tone. Sera felt it too. That no one knew where this relationship would go. But she also didn't want to back away. When afternoon came, Sera left JK's house. On the way back, she gazed out the bus window, lost in thought. If my sister were alive, he never would have looked at me. She also remembered that she first liked her brother-in-law at her sister's wedding. JK standing next to Seoyeon in a white tuxedo, was strangely imprinted on her heart and remained in one corner of her mind for a long time. That night, JK sat alone in the living room. After Sera left, the house became quiet again. And only Seoyeon's photo looked at him unchangingly. Seoyeon, I'm sorry. But I'm so lonely. When I'm with her, I strangely feel alive. The photo said nothing. JK closed his eyes and took a breath. And the emotions contained within were too complex to express in words. A few days later, Sera visited JK's house again. The two embraced without words and sat side by side on the sofa in silence. Holding hands, they just spent time feeling each other's warmth. Brother-in-law, is it okay for us to keep meeting like this? I don't know. But I don't think I can stop. JK answered and squeezed her hand tighter. Sera also closed her eyes and leaned her head. They both knew their relationship had already crossed the line and crossed an irreversible river. However, that fact couldn't stop their hearts. Meanwhile, the eyes of those around them began turning toward them little by little. One of JK's old friends happened to see Sera in front of the house and threw out a joking remark. These days that sister-in-law comes to your house often. Is there something going on? JK laughed it off vaguely, but his heart sank. Rather than anxiety about being caught, the fact that someone suspected this relationship weighed much heavier on him. After that day, JK and Sera became more cautious. Meeting naturally like before wasn't easy. And their hearts would suddenly race at any sound outside the door. One day, Sera went to work at school and felt a strange atmosphere. Fellow teachers whispered and looked at her. And gazes followed her every time she passed through the hallway. At lunchtime, her closest colleague approached carefully. Sera, are you seeing someone? No, why? No. It's just that you look so bright lately, I was curious. Sera felt her face redden and shook her head. But anxiety was creeping up inside her heart. That evening, Sera called JK. Brother-in-law, I'm a little anxious. People at school are looking at me strangely. It's okay. No one will know. But anxiety was also mixed in JK's voice. After enduring for several days, Sera sent a message first. Brother-in-law, I miss you so much. Can I see you briefly today? JK saw that text. And pondered for a long while before finally taking his car keys and leaving the house. When he arrived in front of Sera's house, she was pacing in front of the entrance. The moment their eyes met, no words were necessary. JK quietly approached and held her. I'm sorry. I missed you. Me too. That night, they confirmed each other once more. More intensely and desperately. The next morning, after breakfast, Sera called JK in a low voice. Brother-in-law, I have something to tell you. What is it? Actually. Sera couldn't speak and hesitated. JK stroked her hair and waited. When I last went to the hospital with my sister, she gave me something. What? A diary. My sister's diary. JK sat up. Why are you telling me this now? I was scared to read it. But yesterday I gathered courage and read it. Sera took out an old diary from her bag. JK accepted it with trembling hands. The page Sera opened was full of Seoyeon's writing. When I leave, JK will be too lonely. He's someone who shouldn't be alone. Someone needs to be by his side. Sera, you take care of your brother-in-law. If it's you, I can be at ease. You like your brother-in-law too. I know everything. Your eyes were different from the wedding day. When I'm gone, you be by his side. That's my last request. JK shed tears while reading the diary. Sera cried with him. The two held each other and cried like that for a long while. Seoyeon knew. She allowed us. At that moment, the weight pressing on them began to lighten little by little. They realized their love wasn't betrayal but the last gift Seoyeon left behind. After that day, the two no longer hid. They walked together confidently. And people around them gradually began to accept it. One spring day 6 months later, JK and Sera had a small wedding. There weren't many guests, but it was full of people who sincerely blessed them. After the ceremony ended, the two held hands tightly and left the venue. On a spring day with cherry blossoms scattering, they met a new beginning. After returning from their honeymoon, they sat in front of Seoyeon's photo and prayed together. Sister, when our baby is born, I'll tell them lots of stories about you. How warm a person you were, how much you loved us. A year later, a healthy daughter was born. Her eyes were full of happy tears. In JK and Sera's living room, Seoyeon's photo still remained. 5 years later, JK and Sera came to run a small cafe. The cafe's name was Seoyeon's Gift. It became a space where lonely or hurting people came to find comfort and gain courage to love again. One day, a customer asked, "Owner, the cafe name is special. Does it have a meaning?" JK and Sera looked at each other and smiled. "It's the greatest gift my first wife left behind. That even after losing someone you love, you can love again. That's the gift Seoyeon gave us." That night, returning home, the two sat side by side. In front of Seoyeon's photo. "Seoyeon, we're living well. Thank you. For giving us the courage to love again." Outside the window, the full moon was shining brightly. JK held Sera's hand tightly, and Sera leaned her head on his shoulder. They no longer suffered from guilt. They were living confidently in love within Seoyeon's blessing. Thank you for listening to JK and Sera's story. That we can love again even in loss, that is the second chance life gives us. Today's story ends here. If anyone watched until the end, please leave a comment saying I watched it well. Your small interest gives me really great strength. Subscriptions and likes are all free. I ask for them once each. I'll come back with even better stories next time. Thank you.